My best friend since childhood, Rachel, seduced my husband at my father's funeral while I was giving the eulogy. I found their text 2 weeks later. Instead of confronting them, I spent a year becoming the woman I should have been all along. When I was ready, I invited them both to dinner to discuss our future. I'm Ava, 33 years old, female, and I'm typing this in the kitchen my dad helped tile. The grout line's a little crooked because he said, "Perfection is sterile, kiddo," and then laughed until his eyes watered. If my hands shake, it's because the tile still smells faintly like the lemon oil he used to wipe the counters when he wanted to look useful. He died in March. That part is plain. Everything else feels like a fever that never broke. Rachel, 33 years old, female, my best friend since we were 8, grew up 2 houses down in a little blue ranch with a lawn that always looked like it gave up. We learned to braid hair on each other, stole lip gloss from CVS together, learned the choreography to late 2000s music videos in my living room until we broke a floorboard. She was the first person to call me pretty after my braces, the first to hold my hand after my first breakup, the first to tell me Ethan was hot in a soft boy way, which felt like a compliment until it didn't. Ethan, 35 years old, male, my husband, met me in a campus machine shop. He's the kind of person who keeps screws sorted by size in little labeled bins and apologizes to countertops when he bumps them. My dad, Frank, 62 years old, male, loved Ethan on sight. "He's steady," Dad said, as if that were the highest calling. It was for me. I loved being steady. We bought a brownstone that needed everything and made it ours one slow weekend at a time. Rachel is not steady. Rachel knows how to enter a room like the room owes her money. She collects nicknames and borrowed sweaters and attention. When we were 19, she threw a wine glass at a wall because a guy didn't text back and then sobbed into my lap like the world had ended. At 27, she swore she accidentally shattered our engagement photo, face down on the coffee table, after too much rosé. "I'm clumsy," she said, bleeding lightly from her palm, and I found myself bandaging her while she laughed and cried at the same time. It always felt like she was stirring the air just to see what would fly loose. She loved my dad. That's what I thought. He fixed her brakes once when she was broke and didn't lecture her about it. She would bring him pie from the diner she worked at, sit on our porch steps, and smoke those skinny cigarettes she swore she wasn't addicted to. "You got yourself a good man," she told me at my bridal shower, eyes flicking to Ethan like she was inspecting a purchase. "Don't get boring." At the funeral, lilies turning the chapel air into something thick and sugary, my dad's old Navy photo propped next to a folded flag. I stood at the lectern with my note cards and talked about the way he hummed when he tied rope, how his hands were always a little nicked, how he told me to keep going. People laughed in the right places. I could feel Rachel's eyes on me like a spotlight, the way she always watches as if she's waiting for an entrance cue. In my peripheral, I saw Ethan's profile, the soft slope of his nose, the jaw he clenches when he's trying to be brave. I didn't know then, couldn't have known, that while I was telling a room of people who loved him that grief doesn't come in waves so much as in riptides, Rachel would be behind the chapel, smoothing her dress, leaning close. I didn't know that my steady life had already begun to tip. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was still in that numb cardboard version of myself. I'd stand in the shower until the water went cold because the thought of turning the handle felt like too much. Grief does that. It steals the mechanics of living. But what gutted me wasn't just my dad being gone. It was what I found on Ethan's phone one gray Tuesday when I thought I was looking up the name of the pharmacy refill app he used. The messages were there like landmines. Rachel. My Rachel. Threads of texts hidden under a contact name labeled Jenna, but written in a voice I knew too well. "You looked so broken at the funeral. I wanted to make you feel alive again. You shouldn't be saying this. She's my wife. And I've been your best friends everything since we were kids. Don't pretend you didn't want me behind the chapel." I sat on the edge of our bed holding that phone, heartbeat ricocheting in my ribs. The world tilted. My dad's funeral. The eulogy. The spotlight. I thought Rachel's eyes put on me. It wasn't admiration. It was cover. While I told stories about the man who built me, she was dismantling me piece by piece with Ethan. I didn't scream. I didn't hurl the phone at the wall, though God I wanted to. Instead, I heard my dad's voice in my head. Keep going, kiddo. Rope only knots if you pull too fast. For days, I lived like an actor. Smiled at Ethan. Sent Rachel a meme she'd normally send me first. All while those words echoed. I watched them both closer. How Ethan lingered when she hugged him goodbye after dropping off soup. How Rachel tilted her head and bit her lip at him, like some private signal I hadn't noticed until now. I started cataloging. Receipts, screenshots, times, and places. Not because I wanted to confront them yet, but because I felt like if I didn't hold the evidence in my own hands, I'd wake up thinking I hallucinated it. The betrayal festered. But under it, something unexpected sprouted. This clarity. I had been the steady wife, the safe wife, the one who smoothed edges. Rachel was fire, and Ethan loved the burn. And me? I was done being the girl who patched everyone else's chaos. I didn't confront them. Not then. I bought a gym membership, actually used it. I learned how to cook something other than comfort food. I took the camera Dad gave me for my 18th birthday out of its dusty box and started walking the city at night, taking photos of strangers in neon shadows. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I was building, not someone holding on. But at night, when I lay beside Ethan pretending to be asleep, I'd stare at the ceiling and whisper in my head, "When I'm ready, I'll make you both look me in the eye." And God, I was already starting to plan that dinner. Don't forget to subscribe. Grief is a strange mask. It hides and reveals in equal measure. Outwardly, I was still the grieving daughter, the dutiful wife, the lifelong friend. People saw me at the grocery store with mascara smudged under my eyes and thought, "Poor Ava, she lost her dad." They didn't know I was also carrying around the corpse of my marriage and the knife my best friend left in my back. Rachel didn't stop inserting herself. If anything, she doubled down. She'd call Ethan late at night to check in on me, but would ask him to step outside so she could talk freely. When she dropped by with a bottle of wine, she insisted on pouring Ethan's glass first, brushing his hand a second too long while I smiled like a mannequin. I started testing them. Small things, subtle. One night I pretended to be asleep on the couch. I heard Rachel whisper, "You deserve more than this quiet life. I can give you more." Ethan didn't answer at first, just this awful silence that said everything. Then, "Stop. Not here. Not here." As if somewhere else it would have been okay. Every encounter became a study in theater. I watched the way Rachel looked at him, the way Ethan avoided looking at me when she was in the room. It was like being haunted in my own home. But here's the part I can admit only now. A sick part of me felt electrified by it. Rage, humiliation, betrayal. They were fuel. For years, I had been the version of myself that played safe. The girl who kept Rachel out of jail at 19. The wife who never said no to Ethan's need for steadiness. The daughter who tried to be enough for a man who already thought I was. And here I was, suddenly burning alive inside. I leaned into it. I joined a boxing gym, wrapped my hands, hit the heavy bag until my knuckles ached. The sound of glove on leather was better than therapy. I cut my hair, sharp, blunt, nothing soft left. I filled sketchbooks with plans, fragments, words Dad used to tell me about rope and fire and endurance. I rebuilt myself not as steady but as unshakable. Rachel, of course, noticed. "Wow, Ava," she said one afternoon, looking me up and down. "You're intense lately." Ethan laughed nervously. I just smiled back. Intense was the point. The years stretched. I became someone neither of them really knew anymore. Friends started telling me I seemed different. I was. And then, like clockwork, Rachel started to unravel. The more I withdrew, the more desperate she got. She'd text me at 2 a.m. "Do you still trust me? You're not mad at me, right?" She'd drop by unannounced, tearful, just needing my best friend. But she'd cling to Ethan's eyes, not mine. I didn't flinch. Not anymore. I was waiting. Because a day was coming, that dinner. And when it did, they'd both see just how much I had changed. But before that day arrived, Rachel made her first big mistake. She left her scarf in my car after one of our girls' nights. I was about to toss it in her direction the next morning when I noticed the faintest smear of Ethan's cologne on it. Not the one he wore around me, the one he saved for work events. My hands didn't shake this time. I folded the scarf, tucked it into my drawer, and whispered to myself, perfect. Because evidence wasn't just on Ethan's phone anymore. It was woven into fabric, waiting to be used. Rachel's scarf sat in my dresser like contraband, a trophy and a curse. Every time I opened the drawer to grab socks, it stared back at me, whispering that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining things. Ethan's cologne still clung to it weeks later, sharp and chemical, like the truth refusing to fade. I didn't confront him. I didn't confront her. Instead, I kept building. My body was stronger now, my shoulders firm, my fists calloused. I'd spend evenings running the streets near Dad's old workshop, the air thick with oil and sawdust, as if he were jogging beside me. I wasn't the same woman they thought they could betray quietly. But with every step forward, Rachel grew bolder. She'd sit too close to Ethan at barbecues, laugh too loud at his dumb dad jokes, touch his arm like it was hers to claim. I caught her once, in my own kitchen, reaching into the fridge while Ethan was fixing a cabinet hinge. She leaned down, murmured something, and he smiled in a way he hadn't smiled at me in months. That was the first time I imagined smashing a wine glass against the tile. I didn't. But the image lived with me. Ethan, for his part, tried to live in two worlds. With me, he was careful, dutiful. He'd bring home flowers from Trader Joe's, ask if I was okay, even kiss my forehead when he thought I was asleep. But his eyes told on him. They'd flicker with guilt, or maybe fear, whenever Rachel's name lit up his phone. He thought he was steady. He wasn't. The cracks widened the night of my birthday. Rachel insisted on throwing me a little gathering at her apartment. Just close friends, she'd said, batting her lashes at Ethan. The whole night felt staged, like she was hosting a play in which I was the lead actress who didn't know her lines. She gave a toast to Ava, who's been my sister in everything that matters. But her hand lingered on Ethan's shoulder while she said it. I saw it. He saw that I saw. And for one awful electric moment, the three of us existed in the same unbearable silence. That night, after we got home, Ethan tried to kiss me. I turned my face, let his lips land on my cheek. He froze, searching my eyes like he knew the game was ending. I smiled, soft, almost pitying. Good night, Ethan. Then I shut the bedroom door. What he didn't know was that I'd already booked the reservation. A small, expensive restaurant downtown, one Dad had always wanted to try but never did. 2 weeks from that night, I invited Ethan and Rachel to dinner. Told them it was important, that it was about our future. Rachel texted back within minutes. Finally, I knew you'd want to talk about this eventually. XO. Ethan didn't text. He just stared at me differently in the mornings, like he was bracing for something. He was right to, because I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was planning an unveiling. A slow, deliberate peeling back of the life they thought they'd stolen without consequence. And when that dinner came, I wasn't just going to sit across the table as Ava, the betrayed wife, the grieving daughter. No, I'd sit there as the woman I had built from the ashes, the woman they created in their lies. And I was going to feed them their own ruin, one course at a time. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. 1. Hi again. I didn't think I'd actually be back here so soon, but the last post blew up in ways I wasn't ready for. First off, thank you. Really. Some of your comments made me cry, some made me laugh. Whoever said, Rachel gives main character in a Lifetime movie energy, had me wheezing. And some hit a nerve I didn't know I still had. I read everything. The DMs too. Yes, even the ones telling me to burn their house down. Tempting, not gonna lie. A lot of you said the same thing, that staying quiet for a year wasn't weakness, it was strategy. That meant more to me than I can explain, because for months I thought silence made me a coward. Turns out it was sharpening the knife. But here's the thing. Ethan and Rachel must have sensed something shifting, because the last 2 weeks have been volatile. Rachel showed up at my job, just appeared in the lobby with coffee like we were still besties. Smiled at my coworkers, hugged me too tight, whispered, Don't be mad at me, okay? You know I'd never hurt you. I nearly laughed in her face. My boss later asked, is she okay? And I had to fake some excuse about stress. Ethan, meanwhile, has gone into overdrive. Flowers, fancy dinners, suddenly volunteering to fix every squeaky hinge in the house. It's like he can feel me slipping away and doesn't know why. Last night he actually cried, real tears, about how he's been distracted, but he wants us to be strong again. Distracted. That's the word he used. Distracted. Like my best friend on her knees at my father's funeral was a TV rerun. He forgot to pause. And me? I'm calm. Too calm, maybe. I've been setting the table in my head, rehearsing what I'll say when we finally sit down for that dinner. I've even picked out what I'll wear. Black silk dress, sharp lines, nothing soft. Rachel always accused me of being boring, of blending in. She won't see boring when I walk into that restaurant. To everyone who told me not to lose myself in revenge, I hear you. But this isn't about rage anymore. It's about symmetry. They broke something sacred while I was honoring the man who taught me integrity. So when I look across the table at them, I won't just be exposing what they did. I'll be showing them the woman they created in the process. And yes, dinner is still on. The reservation is booked. The stage is set. I'll update you when the first glass of wine hits the table. Also, shout out to the commenter who said, serve them dessert cold but make sure it's poisonously sweet. You get it. The night of the dinner came like thunder rolling in slow motion. I'd been rehearsing for months, but when I slipped into that black silk dress and caught my reflection in the mirror, I realized I didn't need to practice anymore. I was ready. Ethan drove us downtown, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel. He'd been skittish ever since I mentioned inviting Rachel. He asked 3 times if this was really necessary, and each time I smiled, kissed his cheek, and said, it's about our future. That word, future, made him twitch. Rachel was already at the restaurant when we arrived, perched at the bar like she owned the place. She wore red, of course, always the starlet. When she saw us, she squealed, hugged Ethan first, then me as an afterthought. Her perfume was cloying, too sweet, like it was covering something rotten underneath. We sat at a corner table, candles flickering low. I let the silence stretch just a little too long before speaking. I wanted us together tonight, I began, folding my hands neatly on the table. To talk openly, to talk about what comes next. Ethan looked like he was swallowing glass. Rachel smirked, swirling her wine. Finally, she said, leaning in, I knew you'd want to deal with this. It's been hanging in the air forever. Deal with this. She said it like we were all in on some grand joke. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face serene. The waiter brought appetizers, charred octopus, burrata with peaches. I let Rachel chatter about how she'd been suffocating in lies and how Ethan deserves someone who matched his fire. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, trying to shush her, but I raised my hand. No, let her speak. Her voice got louder. People at nearby tables began to glance over. She thrived on spectacle, always had. You've been too safe, Ava, too quiet. Ethan needs more. We need more. She grabbed his hand across the table like I wasn't sitting right there. That's when I reached into my bag and pulled out the folded scarf. Rachel's scarf. I placed it carefully on the white linen between the wine glasses. The color drained from Ethan's face. Rachel blinked once, then laughed, high-pitched and brittle. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned forward, lowering my voice so only they could hear. It means I know. The texts, the nights, the scarf. I know exactly what you've been doing since the day my father was lowered into the ground. Ethan started to speak, but his voice cracked. Rachel cut him off, eyes flashing. So what? You think you're the victim here? Maybe if you hadn't been so boring, so small, he wouldn't have needed me. Her voice rose, drawing stares. Ethan hissed, Rachel, stop. But she was unraveling, wild and defiant. No, she needs to hear it. He came to me because I make him feel alive, because I give him what you can't. The restaurant had gone silent. I felt the weight of every pair of eyes on us, but I didn't flinch. I picked up my wine, took a long sip, and smiled. Perfect, I said softly, almost to myself. Because Rachel had just given me the one thing I'd been waiting for. Her meltdown, her unmasking, in front of Ethan and a room full of witnesses. And this was only the appetizer. The restaurant was holding its breath. Forks paused midair, couples frozen over half-finished conversations. Rachel's words, "Because I give him what you can't," hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Ethan yanked his hand out of hers and muttered, "Jesus, Rachel," but the damage was already done. People at the next table actually gasped. One woman covered her mouth, eyes darting between us like she'd stumbled into live theater. I set my glass down gently, the way my dad used to when he wanted everyone to pay attention. My voice was calm, deliberate. "Thank you, Rachel. Really. I couldn't have said it better myself." Her smirk faltered. Ethan leaned forward, face pale. "Ava, please, let's not—" "No," I cut him off, still smiling. "Let's—" "You see, I didn't invite you here to fight. I invited you here to tell you the truth." I reached into my bag again, pulled out a small folder and placed it on the table. Inside were the printouts, texts, screenshots, photos of call logs. Evidence. I slid it across to Ethan. His hands shook as he opened it. Rachel leaned over, trying to grab it, but I held up the scarf between two fingers like a judge revealing Exhibit B. "This too," I said softly. "A little souvenir." Rachel's composure shattered. She lunged for the scarf, knocking over a glass of wine. Red spilled across the tablecloth like blood. Gasps rippled around the room. Ethan pulled back, horrified. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped at her, voice finally cracking. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. The turn. Ethan wasn't defending her. Not anymore. He looked at Rachel like she was poison, like he'd just woken up next to something monstrous. Rachel stood, trembling, eyes darting as whispers swirled around us. "She's manipulating you," she screamed, pointing at me. "She planned this. She's obsessed with control." I leaned back in my chair, perfectly calm. "Control?" I said, tilting my head. "No, Rachel. I just stopped letting you control me." Then I raised my voice, just enough for the nearest tables to hear. "For the record, in case anyone missed it, my best friend Rachel has been sleeping with my husband since the day of my father's funeral, while I gave his eulogy." A collective inhale. Rachel's face contorted. She knocked her chair back with a screech and grabbed her purse. "You're insane!" she shrieked, storming toward the door. But not before someone at another table muttered, loud enough to carry, "Trash!" The entire restaurant turned into a low murmur of judgment as she fled, her heels clacking like gunshots on tile. Ethan sat there, staring at the folder, at the scarf, at me. His lips parted, but no words came. I dabbed my mouth with my napkin, stood, and looked down at him. "Dinner's over, Ethan. Our future is exactly what you made it, empty." Then I walked out, head high, past a room full of strangers who now knew the truth. And behind me, Ethan didn't follow. Not yet. Update 2. I didn't expect to be back this fast, but after that dinner, well, I guess I owe you all the rest. First off, holy hell, I wasn't prepared for how many of you would DM me after the first update. Some of you wanted to Venmo me for a revenge dessert fund. Adorable, but no. And others told me stories about their own Rachels. Reading them felt like sitting around a giant bonfire with strangers who somehow understood my exact kind of pain. So thank you. Really. Now, the fallout. When I left the restaurant, I walked straight past Rachel in the parking lot. She was pacing, screaming into her phone. I didn't hear every word, but I caught, "She humiliated me in front of everyone. And you promised me." I didn't stop, didn't even look at her. My heels clicked like punctuation marks all the way to my car. Ethan didn't come home that night. Not surprising. What did surprise me was what I woke up to. 20 missed calls, half from him, half from Rachel. A few texts, too. Ethan's read like confessions written by a man half drunk, half panicked. I didn't mean for this to happen. She pressured me. "Can we talk?" Rachel's were a different beast. Paragraphs of rage, calling me manipulative, pathetic, jealous. My favorite line, "You think you won? Ethan will always need me more than you." By noon the next day, it wasn't just my phone buzzing. Friends started texting, "What happened last night?" Someone posted about it on Facebook. Apparently, one of the diners live posted the meltdown. A thread full of strangers dissected the crazy red dress mistress who screamed in a restaurant. It spread fast. Mutual friends recognized Rachel immediately. Within hours, she was nuking her socials, but it was too late. The mask was off, not just for Ethan, but for everyone. Here's the kicker. Ethan showed up 2 days later, eyes hollow, suitcase in hand. He actually cried on my porch saying Rachel had blown up his life, that she was threatening to tell his boss, that he wanted to come home. I just looked at him through the screen door and said, "You already burned this house down. You don't get to move back into the ashes." Then I shut the door. The messages since? Desperate, apologetic, angry. They swing from "I love you" to "You'll regret this" within hours. The unraveling is loud, messy, public. And me? I've been sleeping better than I have in a year. Some of you told me to go no contact. Some told me to scorch the earth further. Honestly, I think I've already done enough. I didn't need to ruin them. They did that themselves. All I did was hold up the mirror. Still, part of me can't help but wonder, should I just block them both completely now? Or let them keep spiraling while I watch from a safe distance? Because if I'm honest, watching them self-destruct is the sweetest dessert I've ever tasted. Rachel's implosion didn't stop at the restaurant. It was just the opening act. 2 days after update 2, my neighbor texted me at midnight, "Hey, there's a woman screaming outside your house." My heart knew before my head did. I peeked through the blinds and there she was, Rachel, barefoot on my lawn, mascara smeared, waving her phone like a weapon. "Ava, you ruined everything," she screeched. "You think people love you now? You think you're some hero?" She hurled her purse at my porch, contents scattering like shrapnel. Lipsticks, a smashed compact mirror, a wad of crumpled receipts. I didn't go outside. I called the cops. By the time they arrived, Rachel was sobbing on the curb, alternating between begging Ethan to pick her up and spitting venom at me. They took her home, but not before one officer, clearly embarrassed, muttered, "You might want to get a restraining order." Ethan texted the next morning, "I didn't know she'd do that. I'm sorry." As if sorry was some kind of fire extinguisher for the wreckage, I ignored him. But Rachel wasn't done. She started showing up at Ethan's office, causing scenes. One of his co-workers, someone I'd barely met, DM'd me on Instagram. "I don't know what happened, but your friend is losing it. Security had to escort her out today." And then came the vandalism. I found my car one morning with "liar" scrawled across the hood in lipstick. I knew Rachel's handwriting like my own. The lipstick shade? The exact one she wore at my birthday party. A twisted calling card. Ethan called later that night, voice breaking. "She's scaring me, Ava. I don't even want her anymore. She's threatening to tell everyone things that aren't true. Please, please talk to her." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You made your bed, Ethan? Now lie in it, with her." And I hung up. Rachel tried to call me too. Voicemails that swung from begging, "I miss you, Ava, please don't hate me," to unhinged fury. "You're pathetic. Everyone sees through you. Ethan was never yours." But here's the thing. For once in my life, I wasn't shaken. I'd already buried my father. I'd already buried my marriage. Rachel couldn't bury me. I'd already been reborn. So, instead of spiraling, I documented everything. Photos of the lipstick on my car, screenshots of her texts, copies of her voicemails, a tidy little archive of chaos, ready for when I needed it. Because part of me knew this wasn't over. Rachel wasn't the type to slink away. She'd keep clawing, keep performing, until someone forced the curtain closed. And I was ready to be the one who cut the lights. Rachel's unraveling became the drumbeat of my life. Louder, wilder, more desperate with every passing week. By the time part 7 played out, I wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. I was the unwilling stage manager of Rachel's meltdown, Ethan trapped beside her like a co-star he never auditioned to be. The final act began on a Saturday morning. I woke to a crash outside, glass shattering, voices raised. I rushed to the window and there she was, Rachel, hurling a brick through Ethan's car windshield. He stood on the lawn in nothing but sweatpants, shouting, trying to grab her wrists as she screamed, "You promised me forever." Neighbors gathered. Phones came out. Someone yelled, "Call the cops!" But I didn't move. I just stood at my window, watching my former best friend drag Ethan's imploded future into daylight. Police arrived. This time, Rachel wasn't sobbing on the curb. She was feral, kicking and clawing, shrieking about how Ethan belonged to her, how I had poisoned everything. They cuffed her while she spat curses, hair wild, eyes bloodshot. Ethan stood frozen, jaw slack, looking less like a victim and more like a man staring at the monster he had fed. That night, I finally blocked them both. But before I did, I sent Ethan one last message. "This is the life you chose when you followed Rachel behind the chapel at my father's funeral. Don't call me again. Ever." The next morning, I filed the restraining order. The evidence folder, texts, scarf, voicemails, vandalism photos, made the judge's decision easy. Rachel was barred from contacting me in any form. The irony? She'd burned every bridge so loudly that no one rushed to defend her. Her reputation was already ash. Ethan tried one last time, slipping a letter into my mailbox weeks later. It was rambling, handwritten, apologizing for everything, begging for another chance. I didn't even open it fully. I tore it down the middle, dropped it in the trash, and felt nothing. Because here's the truth. Rachel and Ethan thought they destroyed me at my weakest when my father's coffin was still heavy in the ground. What they really did was strip me bare, force me to become someone I'd never dared to be. I am not the quiet, steady woman they thought would tolerate crumbs of loyalty. I am the woman who rebuilt herself from ash and grief. The woman who can sit at a table and let liars expose themselves with nothing more than a smile. Rachel lost her mask. Ethan lost his marriage. And me? I gained myself. That is the sweetest revenge I could have ever served.